Thanks so much. Thank you for joining. Today, we want to talk again about how the Liberal government is choosing to cut the help that families need, that people need, by $800 a month starting in July. That is going to be devastating. What that means is for someone that can't go back to work, whose sector is still shut down, whose industry is still not opened up, and who cannot get back to work, that person is going to have to try to make it by with $800 less a month. That is a wrong thing to do. It is particularly wrong when this Liberal government chooses not to go after the companies that took public money and did not actually use it to hire workers and instead paid out dividends to their shareholders or gave bonuses to their executive. That is what the government should be doing, going after companies that wrongly used public money, clawing back money from them. But instead, this Liberal government is choosing to go after the people that are hardest hit, those who can't go back to work. We see this pattern of behavior. Instead of telling banks to stop increasing their banking fees, gouging Canadians in a pandemic, the Liberals aren't doing that. But instead, they're going after, again, people that can't go back to work. That is a wrong decision. And what we said from the beginning is that we need to continue to give help to people until there is a reopening, until those jobs are available again, until people can go back to work, until their sectors are opened up again. We need to continue to provide help. That's our position. That would be the right thing to do. And instead of going after people and families, this Liberal government should go after those very wealthy companies that took public money and did not need to. That's where they should be putting their efforts. They should be making sure banks don't gouge Canadians. That should be their priority. The Liberals seem again to have the wrong priorities. Donc, comme j'ai dit ailleurs, que je veux encore mentionner que dans quelques mois, le gouvernement libéral va couper l'aide aux gens. Ce sont les gens qui ne peuvent pas retourner au travail. C'est presque 2 millions Canadiens, Canadiennes qui utilisent la PCRE pour rejoindre les deux bouts. Et on doit les aider. Au lieu de faire ça, le gouvernement libéral doit demander aux entreprises qui ont utilisé l'argent public pour donner l'argent aux actionnaires ou pour donner des bonus. C'est ces entreprises qui doivent repayer au lieu d'attaquer les gens qui ne peuvent pas retourner au travail. Et c'est quelque chose que le gouvernement libéral a montré à quelques reprises, comment il défend les intérêts des ultra riches, défend les intérêts des grandes banques qui ont gagné des profits énormes et qui maintenant augmentent leurs frais bancaires. Et le gouvernement libéral fait rien pour les arrêter, malgré le fait qu'ils ont le pouvoir de les arrêter. On a des entreprises qui ont pris d'argent public et les mal utilisés. Le gouvernement libéral fait rien pour régler ça, mais dans quelques mois, ils vont réduire le montant d'appui pour les gens qui ne peuvent pas retourner au travail à $800 par mois. Donc, c'est dévastateur pour ces familles. Et on va entendre l'histoire de quelqu'un qui va être frappé par cette décision. So we're going to hear a story from someone who would be impacted by this decision, someone who would directly feel the consequences of the Liberals' decision to cut that help. So without further ado, I want to pass the mic over to Jabi. Jabi, thank you so much for being here. And please share your story. The mic is now yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jabby. I'm a server when I could be, and I live in Toronto. My industry was initially shut down in March of 2020, and it's been hard. It's been hard for a lot of people across this country throughout this time. I should preface by saying that I don't really ride with any political party. I'm here because I was at a memorial the other day, and there was someone from the NDP who really stood with the community. And so when they asked if I talked today, I decided to give my time. Because to be frank, time is basically all I have to give because I don't really have much. Um, with the current support I receive from the government after paying my bills and all that kind of stuff, I'm left with about $170 a month. Uh, so this is with the current state of the support. I don't know if y'all have ever tried to live on $170 a month to buy food, to support studies, to buy cat litter. She's an indoor cat, but it's hard. I'm very fortunate that my partner has been working through the pandemic. She's a baker, so she's had to go out every day to work her shifts since last year. And I know at a job that she decided to leave because she didn't feel supported by them, they cut her hero pay, I think is what they were calling it, in June of 2020, following what the big grocery stores were doing and that sort of thing. So we still struggle to get by, even with her bringing in an income and government supports. And the idea of losing $800 a month is inconceivable to me. There would have to be a lot of hard conversations with my landlord. There would have to be a lot of things that need to be cut off. I'm very fortunate that, we were able to cut our internet and work out a deal with the landlord because there's no way we could afford to do that. And thus, there's no way I could have been with you here today. I've had a lot of community support during this time. I'm studying to be a sommelier so that hopefully, when things are reopened again, I'm able to try and command a higher wage so that I'm able to build a savings so that if for whatever reason the whole world stops again, I won't have to be in the same situation. Um, we're just a couple of young people who are trying to start our lives, and through no fault of our own, we've lost almost everything in terms of savings, in terms of trying to plan for the future. At this point, we're behind the eight ball, and I don't know when we'll get out of it. Within my industry, as many of you know, there's been a lot of opening and closing and opening and closing. And through no fault of my bosses, there's just a lot of instability. And the only thing that we were able to sort of depend upon through this time is knowing that, all right, I'm going to have the support of the government because I feel like that's the point of government to be there for its citizenry. And so I'm not really sure how they can justify taking away from folks who have nothing. Like there's a lot of folks who are very fortunate through the pandemic to be able to work from home, to be able to develop savings. I've seen all these news articles about all the savings that have grown across the country, but that's not the reality for someone like me. It has just been debt and fear. And even with reopening on the horizon, there is still fear because you look at the what's happening around the globe where people are getting hit, people are having to lock down again. Even the most recent reopening lasted 2 weeks, and I'm very fortunate that I have very responsible bosses who took the time and were very vocal in communicating with us. And I just wish that I could have that same sort of vocal communication from the government and the same understanding that while many people did well, and I do not begrudge them the ability to survive and thrive, I think we need to not forget that there's a lot of people who did it. Um, and I love my job. I like serving. That's why I'm studying to be a sommelier. I like being a guide to experience. I like sharing understanding about food and wine. And if people like me can't survive, then I think we really need to stop and think like, what kind of world do you want to live in? And please just be honest about it. Like, please don't tell me we're all in this together when we're not, because that adds pain to the hurt. And I already have enough pain. Um, so I'm hoping they change their mind, or else I am in utterly, I was about to say a bad word, but I would be in a very, very bad place. And there's a great many people like me who literally just want to start lives. We want to build. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not there yet. And to cast so many people in darkness at this point, I don't know how you can do that with a clean conscience.
Thanks so
So
much.
that's me. Sorry, I'm getting a bit worked up.
No, no, I really appreciate it, Jabby. Thank you so much for sharing that story and what it means. I think that's exactly what we needed to hear. We needed to hear the impact on real people. This is a decision that the Liberal government is taking that's going to hurt people, and why we are saying very clearly the Liberal government should not be doing this, should not be cutting the help that people need. People, as Jabby pointed out, a lot of folks can't get back to work. A lot of folks have been going through openings and closing and back and forth. And it's been a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. Knowing that you can continue to get support while the sectors are still going through lockdowns is vital. It's crucial. And it would be very painful for so many people. It would be unimaginable to cut the help that people need by $800. So I want to make sure that's clear. And I really appreciate, Jabby, you sharing your story. I also want to add an additional point before we go to questions. Just my heartfelt um, thoughts to the Indigenous communities around Canada and survivors of residential schools. A recent report indicated a grave was found of over 200 children that were buried at a residential school. And again, this would mean that these are kids that the deaths were unregistered. Their families probably never learned of what happened to their kids. We heard from National Grand Chief Perry Gelgard, who said, while not surprising, it's again another example of the pain and the trauma that Indigenous communities have to face. And I just wanted to express my condolences. And again, a reminder that we cannot forget this horrible time in our history that resulted in injustice at the time and continuing injustice to this day. And it's important to reflect on that as well. Thanks so much. And with that, I want to pass it back to Nina and any questions the media might have.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. J'aimerais inviter les membres des médias d'utiliser la fonction lever la main au bas de la page pour poser votre question et question de suivi. I would like to invite members of the media to please use the raise hand function on the bottom of the page to ask a question and follow up. We will go ahead and start with Christopher Reynolds, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh, and thank you very much also, Ms. Dale, for sharing your story. I'm going to pivot to quite a different subject here, Mr. Singh. Last night, Liberal MP Will Amos said in a statement that on Wednesday evening during parliamentary proceedings, he was caught on camera urinating. It was not visible to the public, and he said it was accidental in his statement last night, but he said the incident was unacceptable. He apologized for it. So I'm just wondering what you make of this second incident of exposure involving this MP and a possible breach in parliamentary decorum. Please go ahead.
Certainly, I know that in his statement, he said that he's going to get some help. So I wish him the best, and I hope that he gets the help that he needs. But I want to be clear on this point. When people are not in public, and he was not necessarily in a public viewing point when this happened, videos of people should not be shared if they're not actively in public. And I think that's what happened to him the first time. He was again not on the public feed, and someone shared a video of him. It's wrong to share videos of people without their permission, and that's something that has to be put out there. It should be obvious to state that. But if someone's in private or someone's not public facing, their videos shouldn't be shared of them, and I think that's also a big problem here.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Donc, ce qui s'est passé, la déclaration de M. Amos a mentionné qu'il va chercher l'aide, l'appui, et j'espère qu'il reçoit, j'espère qu'il recevra l'aide qu'il a besoin. Mais aussi, je dois mentionner le fait que les deux fois que M. Amos, les vidéos étaient partagées, les deux fois, c'était dans les moments où il n'était pas dans le public ou dans le frame public. C'était un moment où seulement les autres députés pouvaient le voir. Donc, je dois le dire, on ne doit pas partager les images de quelqu'un sans avoir leur appui, leur permis. Donc, ça, c'est essentiel et c'est quelque chose qui s'est passé dans ce cas. On ne doit pas partager les images de quelqu'un sans leur permission.
Thanks very much. Secondly, on the push to maintain CRB levels at their current point, rather than lowering them by $800 a month, have you received any encouraging signs from the Liberal government or maybe from committee members on this front, or is it looking bleak?
Right now, we've not received any positive signs. And that's why we are continuing to ramp up the pressure and sharing real stories like we heard from Javi Dale. It's important for people to know there are right now nearly 2 million Canadians that rely on the CRB. There are millions of Canadians that can't go back to work because their sectors are shut down. There are lockdowns and reopenings that are still happening. We know that situation right now in Manitoba, for example, has become very dire, and they're sending patients to hospitals in Ontario because their ICU is being overwhelmed. So while we're going through this pandemic and things are still so unpredictable, we believe very strongly that help to families, to people has to continue and should not be cut. This cut would be devastating to cut the help that someone like Jabby receives, she said in her own words, it would be devastating to lose that $800 a month of support. We know that there's many other things that this Liberal government can do. They can go after companies that took public money and didn't need it. Companies that we know it's publicly available. They took public money and then paid out dividends. When you pay out a dividend, you know that you're not in any sort of deficit. You're not losing or not making profit. You're making profit to pay out a dividend. There's lots of money that this Liberal government can go after instead of going after the people that need it most. And so we're going to continue to ramp up pressure. But so far, there hasn't been any sign of support for our initiative from the Liberals, but we're not going to give up. We're going to keep on fighting.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, I have David Thurton with the CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Good morning. Staying
morning.
on the Amos line of questioning, I have to ask, did anyone from your party witness what happened? And did anyone complain about the latest incident from the NDP?
Thanks. I did not receive any information on that from my end. So as far as I know, there was not any complaints raised within the NDP to me or to my team.
And what do you think the response should be to this incident? Obviously someone saw it, whether it was House staff, whether it was an MP. It's not something that you would expect to see when you're showing up for work. What do you think the response should be to this happening a second time?
Well, I should have made this clear before. It's certainly not appropriate. There's no way we can say that what Mr. Amos did is appropriate. It's inappropriate. But what I also am really worried about is that why are images being shared of someone without their permission? Like that's really another troubling thing for me. This is happening in a parliamentary Zoom session where there's only one image that's public, which is whoever is speaking or when the speaker is speaking, and the rest of the MPs can see the other images. And for that to be shared and to end up with media, that to me is also problematic. Why are those images being shared in the first place? It's inappropriate what he did, but there's also a question about those images being shared, and they shouldn't have been.
So what should be the response if it's inappropriate?
That's something for the House of Commons to decide. It's a mistake. It should not have happened, and I'll leave it to the House of Commons. I also think, given his statement and his request for help or that he's going to get help and get support, it's probably no surprise to you, I really believe in giving people support and helping them out when they're going through tough times. And if that's what he's going through, and that's kind of what it sounds like, he's saying that he needs help, I think the focus should be on him getting the help. And I wish him well.
Merci beaucoup. Prochain, j'ai Raymond Fillon avec TVA. C'est à vous.
Merci. Bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
Juste pour poursuivre sur M. Amos, est-ce que vous pensez qu'il devrait y avoir des sanctions, compte tenu que c'est la deuxième fois que ça arrive en un mois à peine?
Je pense que dans ce cas, ce qu'il a fait, c'est inapproprié, oui, c'est clair. Mais en même temps, il a dit dans une déclaration qu'il a besoin d'aide et il cherche d'aide. Donc, dans mon avis, c'est pas surprenant, mais je pense qu'on doit aider les gens qui font face des problèmes. Et je ne sais pas c'est quoi le problème, mais il a besoin d'aide et j'espère qu'il recevra l'aide qu'il a besoin.
OK, j'imagine que vous m'entendez toujours parce que je ne suis pas capable d'enlever le mute, alors il ne doit pas être là. Je voulais juste savoir en relance, vous parlez que c'est inapproprié de partager des photos comme ça. Je sais que dans le premier incident, il y a eu une photo qui a circulé sur Twitter, mais dans le cas de cette semaine, est-ce qu'il y a aussi eu des images? Je n'en ai pas vu personnellement. Vous semblez dire qu'il y en a eu.
Non, je pense qu'en général, c'est une question qui a été soulevée par ce qui s'est passé avec Will Amos. Donc, j'ai voulu le répéter encore, l'idée que c'est aussi inapproprié de partager les images de quelqu'un sans avoir leur permission.
Très bien, merci.
Oui.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I don't see any more questions. Je ne vois plus de questions. Alors, ceci met fin à notre conférence de presse. This concludes our press conference. Thank you. Merci.
Merci. And thanks again to Jabby. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Take care all. Bye.